we go. So today's guest is Debbi Mack. I've had the pleasure of being on her podcast, Crime Café, and now we are turning the tables, and she is my guest. So I'm going to read a little bit from her bio, which I love, by the way. Quote, Debbi Mack is a retired attorney, novelist, and screenwriter. She was among the first wave of self-published authors to make the New York Times bestseller list in 2011. After having a stroke at age 48, which led to a movement disorder, she reached the stunning conclusion that she wasn't going to live forever. That hit me, Debbi. So to that end, she started her own publishing imprint. She's published 2 mystery series, 2 standalone novels, plus short stories. She's won awards for her writing. She continues to write and is also working on a short film. Debbi, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Actually, I've been nominated for an award.
Okay,
not
well,
quite winning.
You know what? I'm going to give you an award, okay? Because it sounds like you've done a lot of incredible things.
I've done some things I didn't know I was going to do.
Well, you know what? I think that's what life is all about, right? And that's why I'm talking to women who are kind of on their 3rd, 4th, 5th chapter, whatever that looks like. So I want to dig into all of that. But first, I want to circle back to your bio. That line about not living forever, that just really touched me because I feel like I've had some experiences like that in my life. Like I was a caregiver for my mom, and I learn it and then I move away from it and I forget it, if you can believe that. And so I want to hear about what life for you was like before you had the stroke and then what it's been like since.
Well, my life before the stroke was not necessarily all that easy. I think the thing about me is I come from a very poor background, but a poor background that was supported by grandparents who had the means to help us. So I grew up in a really terrible neighborhood the first 12 years of my life. Then I moved from place to place throughout junior high and high school. So you could say it was a difficult childhood.
Where'd you grow up, Debbi?
I was born in New York City, grew up in Queens till I was 12, then moved to Fresno, California, lived with my aunt and uncle there, great aunt and uncle there, then moved after 2 years there to Merced, California. Both of these places are in the Central Valley of California. And personally, I loved it because it was so different from New York. But then after that, I moved around some more. I moved to Maryland. I moved to Monroeville, Pennsylvania. I moved back to Maryland. I didn't know what to do with my life. Actually, it's interesting because I thought at one time I might be a musician. I took piano at the age of 17. I just fell in love with music, basically, because of a friend who could play the piano and guitar, and I'd write lyrics for her. This was in Pennsylvania. Then I moved to Maryland, lost touch with most of the people in Pennsylvania after a while, the way I had a tendency to do, and took piano and learned enough in less than a year that I could have gone to college and majored in it. But I didn't. Something stopped me. And I ended up going to various schools in different places. I'll just sum it up. And ended up at the university. Yeah.
But then you became a lawyer. So obviously you got your degrees.
By degrees. This was by degrees. I had never planned to become a lawyer. This was the funny part. I mean, there's so much of this I could preface with, I never planned for this, but.
Right. It just happened.
What I ended up doing was going to the University of Maryland, taking journalism, because I thought with a journalism background, I'll have the skills to get a job of some sort. I don't know. I'm hearing people laughing out there now, but at the time it seemed like the right thing to do because I wanted to write. I'd always wanted to write. So I thought, okay, journalism, like a lot of journalists go on and write novels. And I thought, I can do that. I want to do that. And but then I got interested in history and started to get a master's degree in history and thought, what am I going to do with a master's in history? And I had to talk with my husband's cousin's husband, husband's cousin's husband, about going to law school. And I was like, that sounds like a job that I won't be bored. I was so afraid of getting a job where I'd be bored. I wanted, to always have some kind of mental stimulation.
You wanted to be challenged. You wanted to be interested and engaged. Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And I was like the last person in the world who would have been pegged as a lawyer as a child because I was so shy. I was painfully shy as a child.
What kind of law did you go into?
Well, basically, I took the first job that would take me, which was at Social Security for the government, doing disability appeals, and I actually argued a case before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit. This was what year was that? That would have had to have been 98, I think.
So that's a big deal. I mean, for a young lawyer. Yeah.
Yes. I was, in my mind, I kept trying to think, okay, this is no different than moot court, okay? You're going to be fine.
Right.
But I remember that morning just being slightly terrified. And it was an interesting experience for many reasons, one of which was this lawyer that I happened to be, who was on the other side, who was the plaintiff's attorney, or in this case, the appellant, as we approached the bench, as we approached the counsel tables, as we went behind the bar, he looks at me and goes, "Oh, are you she? Are you?" As if like he expected somebody, I don't know, who
Older?
didn't look like me.
Right.
Older. I don't know.
Somebody that maybe was more experienced in his mind.
In his mind, because I looked younger than I was. I mean, I was in my early 30s, and people would tell me, "Oh, you look like you're 25."
Right.
And,
so that he was just surprised by that.
He was surprised. Yeah, of course, youthful woman, So, I mean, it's like, and it's the 80s, and,
So you
changed.
You practiced law for a good amount of time, right? 8 or 9 years?
Yeah,
okay.
9 years. And I went through different jobs. I went from Social Security to a law firm. Decided, well, I was at the law firm. I thought I wanted to do litigation, but decided that no, I don't want to do litigation. And I switched to land use and zoning, which was really more appropriate for me because I'm much more of a person who likes to reach agreement on things and fight about things.
So that was a good fit. But then eventually you left the law.
Eventually I did. After opening my own office and going for several years, I worked for EPA also as general counsel for pesticides and toxics.
So you wore a lot of hats in that arena.
Yes, a lot. So
how'd you decide to step away from that?
That was a difficult decision. I had my own office. I'd had it for 3 years, and I was starting to make a little money. And I thought, I want to write. This is what I want to do. I mean, every time I would stand at a copier, say, copying papers that needed to be filed or whatever, whatever, I would think, I could be using this time to write my novel.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's also something too. You said you're starting to make money.
Mm-hmm.
There's this danger with every job, I would say, especially in corporate America. If you start to make real money and you get comfortable in that, it's really hard to step away because, what do they call it? The golden handcuffs.
Handcuffs.
You're walking away from safety and comfort and stability, and your logical mind tells you not to do that.
Precisely. And I never worked in corporate America, but I worked for the government, and that was a very, very safe bet. I mean,
sure, they're always going to need you.
Right, and it's 9 to 5-ish,
Yeah.
But the commute was just outrageous, and so I wanted my own thing. I wanted to just do my own thing. So I opened my own office. I took the steps necessary to open my own office and just did it. And I think the thing that's been the constant in my life is that whenever I see something and think I could do that, and then I think, do I want to do that? If the answer is yes, I will just sit down and just start thinking about how to make it happen.
Figuring it out.
Right.
So what were you doing at age 48. And how many years ago was that?
Gosh, age 48, it was in 2004.
Okay.
So 2004, what was I doing? At the time, I had my I did not have the office. The office was closed. I was freelancing at home.
So you were writing.
I was writing. I was definitely writing. Yeah, I had been writing since the mid-90s. I mean, really working, at making,
As a working writer, right.
Trying,
and so
as freelancer and trying to write my novel, my first novel.
So tell me as much as you're comfortable with about having that stroke and how that changed your life.
Oh, well, it just, it was so bizarre. I was really, really lucky. I was at Barnes & Noble, and I had just met with 3 other women. We were a small writers group. And I went to the bathroom. I'm done in there. I'm trying to button my pants, and for some reason, I just feel really, really tired. So I leaned against the stall wall, and then I slid down. And I was just like sitting there on the floor going, when I feel less tired, I will get up.
But you knew in your head, I mean, this wasn't normal for you. Something was really wrong.
Well, I knew that this was weird, but I could not put together what was going on. I did not realize that my left side was paralyzed. I didn't even realize it. I just sat there feeling really tired. And somebody came in with her child, and the child said, "Mommy, there's someone on the floor in there." And I was so embarrassed I didn't say anything. And she said, "Well, let's go call somebody." And so she did. She left, and eventually they came to get me. There was an ambulance that came, a medic unit rather, and they called it in as a stroke. And I'm hearing this, and I said, "I'm not having a stroke. I don't know what I sounded like. All I know is that I said, 'I'm fine. I want to go home.'"
Right, because you're not aware of what's happening.
I had no idea what was going on. Zero. I mean, when they said that, I tried to move my arm and I realized I couldn't move it. So, it's kind of like, okay, this is happening and it's weird, but they're taking me to the hospital. And so my husband, who was a DC firefighter at the time, Washington, D.C., they called him and said, "This is what's happened." And of course he left. He comes immediately to the hospital, and I'm there. The doctor had spoken to me about something called TPA, a clot busting drug, because they found out that the stroke was caused by a clot. And they said, "Now we can give it to you. We can't. This could be. The results could be good. They could be deadly. They could be, we don't know." And I said, "Go for it."
Yeah, because at that point, what are your options? Yeah.
Right, what are my options, So I got this drug, and boom, I could lift my arm, I could lift my leg. My husband's there with me. He's like, "Oh my gosh." And apparently, I didn't even realize this, a bunch of people somewhere behind me were all high-fiving and cheering.
Because they were so moved by the fact that you had come out of this.
Yeah, that I made it through. And I was walking a couple of days later around the kind of like the ICU area, there, whatever it was.
But what were the
people in beds and thinking, "Oh, I feel so
it could have been
walking."
You. Yeah. I mean, but you do have side effects, right? Still from that.
Yeah.
What were they? Or what are they?
This didn't occur right away. That's the funny part. I think what was going on, I'll tell you what I think in a moment. What happened was about 5 or 6 months after the stroke, after what I thought was a complete recovery, my hands started doing this. I mean, it would just start clenching in just a little bit. And my toes, but the left side, on the left side, my left hand and foot were clenching in a lot. And the more I every day it would get a little bit worse. And I eventually went back to the neurologist who treated me, and she's diagnosed it with as dystonia, post-stroke dystonia. Dystonia is a movement disorder that affects a very small percentage of people. Most of the time it's because of genetic things, but this is a very special kind of dystonia.
And it doesn't go away.
It does not go away, but you can actually, I'm actually now doing physical therapy and occupational therapy
To help manage it.
A neurophysical therapist.
So you say in your bio, and I mean, this is how we started the show,
right,
that it really changed your outlook on life. Talk about that, because I think so many of us have experiences that change us, but then we easily forget those lessons the further we get away from them. But this obviously is not something you forget. So tell me how it changed your life.
Well, I just realized that if I wanted to get anything done, I needed to factor time into it and really be focused on what it is that I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to say and what I bring as a creator to the table, so to speak. And my experiences really have informed a lot of my writing. I mean, that's true of any writer, but it's just that my experiences in some cases have been so weird. There are many times when I could have died before that. That's the funny part, if you can call it funny. But that one really kind of brought it home for me. It was like, okay,
What are you waiting for?
what are you waiting for exactly? And I'm just past the point of waiting for permission from other people to do things, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I mean, you were 48 years old. You were very young to be experiencing that. And so
Yes.
to have that experience at that age, and I'm doing the math, so does that make you, how old are you now, 68?
67. I'll
67.
be 68 in July.
Okay. So you obviously have had a good amount of time to say, okay, I'm not messing around. And you're not. I mean, you have one mystery series with 3 books. You have one with 2 that you're still working on a third on that one. Talk about some of your writing and what you write about and why you enjoy it.
Well, I started off writing the Sam McRae Mystery Series, which is actually 4 books. I wrote the 4th book first, strangely enough. Then I wrote a 2nd book, which ended up being picked up by a publisher. It was a small press who signed me for a 3-book contract. Why did I start writing it? I had a lot of stories to tell about the law, about how sometimes the law works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the justice system doesn't work out the way it should. Sometimes it does. I wanted to explore kind of the difficulties of a solo practitioner, which I was for a time, who has had a background in criminal law, which I did not have.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like you used your legal background to inform your writing, but you were not a criminal lawyer.
Right. I handled maybe 2 criminal cases while I was in solo practice. So, but I always relied on the kindness of other lawyers to help me out with stuff, which that's another thing. It's like once you do something like this, you do tend to find mentors and people you go to for advice, which is another part of all of this. It's like I realized I need to connect with other people, to get ahead.
To help support you. Yeah.
Right, to achieve my goals. I can't just do this myself. Yeah.
And you also have your own imprint. So some of these books you published yourself, which is a big deal. You mentioned back in 2011, you had a book on the New York Times bestseller list, and it was a very early, early in the time of self-publishing.
I got to tell you, I never planned to do any of that. I never planned to have my own imprint or self-published even. The whole thing in self-publishing What happened was the small press that I was with went out of business 9 months after my book came out. So I was like, oh, God, wow. Okay, everybody was like bitching up a storm about that. I'm like, I don't have time for bitching about this. I need to keep going. So I was trying, just looking around for an agent, more rejections, I wrote 2 standalones, one of which I have published since. That's The Plank Factor. That's the sci-fi thriller that I wrote. Where was I?
Talking about the self-publishing after your publisher closed. Yeah.
I totally went into that like, hey, I think it was because the anthology where I've had my first fiction, a short story published, was also issued by that same press that went under. So they reissued it as a self-published book, the organization that had released the book. That's Sisters in Crime, by the way.
And you thought, hey, why not? Let's just do this.
Why not try it? And just, all I have to do is just put it out there and I'll just say, hey, here it is. And what I did is I went to the Dorothy L. list, which at the time was kind of like the online place for people to talk about mysteries and that they'd read and post reviews. I would look for people who posted reviews on the list. And then I would just send them a polite email asking if they would take a look at my book, telling them who I am, what I wrote, would they look at it? And most of the time they said yes. And I got some really great reviews out of that.
That's
and
fantastic.
People got to know me because of that.
I've never even heard of anybody doing that. I mean, that's such a great idea.
It just seemed to make sense.
What are the obstacles in self-publishing? Because I know there are a lot of hurdles. I mean, basically it's the marketing, right? Because I've done a few, self-published and then traditional publishing, and I've been more successful with the traditional publishing.
Well, it's visibility. It's now, at this point, I'm nowhere near the New York Times bestseller list level. It's just not going to happen. And as a goal, I don't even think about it. I don't even concern myself with it anymore.
You just enjoy what you're doing.
I want to do what I enjoy, and I want to work on the things that need the work. And I am working on my 3rd novel in the Erica Jensen series.
And tell us, or tell the viewers, because I've read this, the listeners, excuse me, who's Erica Jensen and what's that series about?
Erica Jensen is a female Marine veteran. She has PTSD and has suffered an opioid addiction.
Okay, you got me already. You've got me. I'm in.
And she also is struggling, she's in this anger management group because she punched a guy in the nose after he groped her in a bar.
Oh my gosh.
After she came back.
A lot of layers.
She's dealing with the system. She's dealing with this anger management group that she can't stand. And she's trying to eventually come totally clean and, get a clean bill of health from whoever needs to give it to her and get her PI license. In the meantime, she just does these kind of investigations for people.
Trials and tribulations all the time. Twists and turns, all of that.
So she does these things for money, and she has kind of found a mentor, Private Eye, to get advice from.
So you're also a podcaster. You do Crime Café. You talk to people like me, anybody that's involved in the true crime space or the mystery writing space. How did that come about?
It was just an idea. I'd heard so much about podcasting, and I thought, what a great way to bring people together and just get to know, to share what other people know about writing, crime writing in particular. Yeah. What a great way to just get a message out there about what the work these people are doing and how diverse the crime writing space is.
It is, absolutely.
I love that. I love the diversity of backgrounds that I get from people. I mean, I have had people on the show. One person was a writer for Glow, the show Glow, and I was just like floored. I mean, she'd written this book, And I loved the book. I thought it was great. And I started watching Glow as a result and loved the show.
Well, remind me off air. I'm going to give you the name and contact information for my friend Jerry Williams. She's a former FBI agent. She has her own podcast, which is very successful, and she's written several books. And you will love Jerry. So I will make sure I get you that information.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to leave it in this show. Give Jerry a plug because she's awesome, and she was on my show before. So, okay, as if you have, so much time on your hands, you're also a filmmaker, okay? And you're working on a film. Talk about this, about plastic.
Yeah, actually, this is very interesting. It started because there was a contest out there to see if you could write a 3-minute horror about the dangers of plastic. So I thought, okay. So I sat down and wrote something, but I didn't have the means to the time to pull the crew together and do it. So I just made a kind of a short thing. It was okay, but what ended up happening is I expanded on what I had. It is now 8 pages, and it's much better than it was when it started. It is now a sci-fi short.
So it's basically like, don't use plastic because it doesn't, it cannot,
bad.
It's bad for our landfill, it's bad for our air.
It's bad for all of us.
Yeah.
In every way. It's about, when a woman finds all these plastic bottles that are oozing a green goo around her neighborhood, she realizes this is not just ordinary trash and that they pose a danger to people.
Interesting. Well, you are a woman of many talents, Debbie. So what this podcast focuses on is women over 50 who are trying to transform their lives. And, a lot of times women feel stuck. They feel like they're not getting the support. Maybe they don't feel relevant. They don't feel seen. You've obviously managed to continue to reinvent yourself. What kind of advice would you give to other women who are feeling that way?
I would say take some time to just sit and think about what motivates you and why. I think one of the most influential things I've ever heard was Simon Sinek talking about understanding your why. It's why do you do what you do? And there's a reason if you sit and think about it. And also think about who you know who might be able to help you, And this could be anybody. Sit down and make a list of names of people you know. If you feel like there's nobody out there or you don't have resources, you don't know what resources other people have. So that's important. But understanding what you want and why you want it is, I think, key. You start with that. Absolutely.
You gave me a lot of links. So there's a whole bunch of places people can follow you, right? You're everywhere. I mean,
I'm all over the place.
You're all over social media. You've got websites. You've got social media accounts dedicated to writing, also to film. And I'm going to post all of those in the notes. But one of the questions I ask all of my guests is, what is on your bucket list? Because you've done so many things. Is there anything that you're like, wow, there's still this other thing hanging out there that I'd like to do?
Wow. And I would like to do more traveling generally. I would love to see Africa, and I would love to go to Australia.
Those are two big ones.
Like far out places that, that I never imagined I'd go. Stuff like that.
I think that's probably the number one answer I get when I ask that question. People and I have been to Africa in 2017. I actually, as a journalist, I covered a medical mission trip with Duke University. And I went to Uganda, and it's definitely a place I want to go back to, Africa. I mean, it's so vast, obviously. There's so many different countries on that continent. Debbie, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to be on this side of the mic and get a chance to ask you questions because you have such a really interesting career and story. And I know that you will be successful with all of these other projects you're working on, and I will continue to follow you, and my audience will be able to too now that I'm going to post all your links. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.